The Spartan II program was the first major success of the Spartan programs, an effort to produce elite soldiers through mechanical and biological augmentation. Originally envisioned as the second generation of the Orion Project under Generation 2 Orion and the Orion Project Generation 2. Spartan II would be the first in the series to meld advanced exoskeleton technology with the soldiers' superior physiques. Spartan II's experienced the most extensive and invasive physical augmentations out of all the Spartan generations. Starting augmentation at early pubescent ages increased their physical mass and height to around 7 feet by adult age. In the years following the deactivation of the original Orion project in 2506, the effectiveness of small special forces combating the insurrectionists became too difficult for the UNSC to manage. As insurrectionist forces become more effective and the military's responses consequently become more forceful, the need for large-scale military campaigns became more and more obvious. Around 2510, the Office of Naval Intelligence began to re-examine the Carver findings, which had warned of instability in the outer colonies years earlier. The report rationalized that the instability would continue to escalate, and unless drastic military measures were taken, would result in a massive war between the inner and outer colonies. ONI's own projections at that time, and up to 2525, concluded the same as Dr. Carver's findings. Meanwhile, then 18-year-old civilian scientist Dr. Catherine Halsey had been improving upon Carver's report on her own. Her independent conclusions predicted an even darker future than Carver's model, with UNSC inaction against the rebel leadership resulting in a minimum of 30 years of war and 5 billion dead. The maximum was a conflict of indeterminate length, potentially leading to the downfall of human civilization. Halsey presented her results to Vice Admiral Michael Stanforth of ONI Section 3, finding that they had come to the same conclusions. Determined to prevent the predicted carnage, Halsey agreed to work for ONI, specifically Section 3's Special Projects Division, on creating a solution. Generation 2 of the Orion Project was initiated in 2511 as the best possible solution to end the widespread insurgency that raged throughout UNSC space. The project was created with several goals in mind. The first goal was to create a group of elite soldiers meant to subdue insurrectionists in their infancy without substantial military casualties. The second goal was to minimize civilian casualties and avert civil war. The third goal was to substantially reduce the cost of conventional means of pacification. I think their order of priorities tells us a lot about this society. Dr. Halsey's proposal for the project detailed radical changes from the original Orion in many different fields. The first and most controversial was the subjects themselves, who were selected by a gene candidate pool and must fit into a certain age restriction protocol. They must also have possessed superior physical and mental attributes. The trainees must be instilled with military value and the understanding of war, something that cannot be taught to enlisted soldiers. This narrowed the candidates down to children who would be raised and taught in the art of warfare and military values from a young age. Using such controversial means of creating a soldier meant that the project would have to be carried out in the highest form of secrecy. Though conventional body armor had protected soldiers for centuries, the Gen 2 project's second radical change involved integrating the subject with a new powered exoskeleton device designed to keep its users safe and provide a powerful means of combating enemy forces. The drawback of this new armor is its requirement for augmenting the subject, effectively turning the participants into human guinea pigs. Despite the tremendous risk and the unethical means of creating new soldiers, Orion Generation 2 was greenlit by the top brass within the Office of Naval Intelligence, who concluded that the lives that could be saved far outweighed the risks involved. The project was initially granted funding for 300 candidates, though funding was later reduced to half this number. By 2517, 150 suitable candidates had been identified through DNA gathered from the UNSC's Outer Colony vaccination program, though funding had been further reduced to support only half that number. 75 children, all around 6 years old and of both sexes, were kidnapped. In order to preserve the program's secrecy, the children were replaced by flash clones, which would die soon thereafter due to numerous medical complications associated with flash cloning an entire human being. Dr. Halsey's use of cloning, following the dissemination of information on the project to the rest of ONI, came to be regarded as one of the most controversial decisions involved with the program. In particular, the decision drew the anger of Admiral Margaret Barangoski, Commander-in-Chief of ONI, who interrogated Halsey after her capture and demanded to know her reasoning for the use of flash clones. Barangoski viewed the clones as unnecessary, maintaining that Halsey replaced the abductees with clones for personal, moral reasons, believing that she was giving the families closure and thus easing her own conscience. Halsey was not satisfied with the project's original name of Orion Project Generation 2. Thus, she renamed it out of personal preference, as well as to distance the project from the failures of Orion in the minds of the politico and military bureaucrats who controlled the project's budget. In order to pay homage to the sacrifice of the Orion Project, she chose to call the project Spartan II. She considered several other bellicose names, including Praetorians, Landsknechts, Immortals, Minutemen, Titans, Argonauts, Odysseus, Olympians, Zulu, Kronos, Promethean, Armor, Nemesis, Daedalus, Hercules, Viking, and Hyperion. The latter two were quickly excluded. I think it's fascinating that their population was guaranteed to come, the Spartan population was guaranteed to come from the places where they would later be deployed, likely against their own families. I also find Praetorians, Landsknechts, Minutemen, Zulu, they're just kind of, I don't know, those are just kind of bad names. Also Zulu, surely there's a word that would refer to a powerful warrior within the Zulu culture, so you don't have to just use the word Zulu, but maybe that's just me. After being kidnapped and sedated, the Spartan II candidates were taken to the colony world Reach, where they began their training under Chief Petty Officer Franklin Mendez and the AI Deja, who acted as an aide for Halsey on the program. To marginalize the civilian lives they had once led, Their names became a combination of their given names and a number, with family names being discarded. Based mainly within the Reach Fleetcom military complex, the Spartans endured a great deal of hardship during their first years of training. They were placed into situations and drills that pushed their abilities to their very limit and beyond. Their hard training was complemented with high-level education, which included mathematics, science, history, reading, writing, and military tactics. Although his training methodology was tough, even brutal in some regards, Chief Petty Officer Mendez always instilled discipline, honor, and respect into the Spartans. He taught the Spartans how to kill, but at the same time he taught them the difference between right and wrong. During this time, John 117 rose to be the de facto leader of the Spartans. Mendez trained the Spartans until 25 when, at the age of 14, they would go through the toughest part of their training, the biological augmentation procedures, which would kill 30 of the 75 conscripted children and cripple 12 others who would wash out of the Spartan II program, going on to join the Office of Naval Intelligence. Only 33 survived the procedures without physiological deformities, of whom 2 would commit suicide in the following weeks upon encountering their flash clones. The bodies of those candidates who washed out were placed in cryonic suspension in the hope that they could someday be resuscitated. At least some of the candidates who were crippled may have been physically rehabilitated in the later years. Monstrous. And remember that this was to turn them against humans. The Human Covenant War marked a change in objectives for the program. Originally intended to quell rebellions, the Spartans were now forced into battle against a superior opponent to the insurrectionists, the Covenant. This new threat accelerated the Spartans' training to its final phase, Project Mjolnir. With the Mjolnir armor, the Spartans would be the first major UNSC response to the alien threat. The Spartans continuously proved highly effective against all threats. Their heroic rearguard and delaying actions saved countless human lives from the genocidal Covenant onslaught. In 2547, the Spartan II program was revealed to the public in an effort to boost morale among the UNSC. The Spartans' prowess was not lost on the Covenant, who came to fear, and in the case of the Sangili, respect the Spartans as demons. Inevitably, the small number of Spartan IIs dwindled as casualties were sustained. As the exploits of the Spartans were a major propaganda boon to the UNSC, Section 2 of the Office of Naval Intelligence issued Directive 930, which stated that Spartans killed or wounded would be listed as missing in action or wounded in action, thus maintaining the illusion of the Spartans' invincibility. By August 27, 2552, 25 of the 28 remaining Spartan IIs assigned to NavSpec Weep, except Grey Team, had been recalled to Reach, some from combat, to receive new orders for Operation Red Flag, a mission that HICOM hoped would end the war. They would commandeer a Covenant vessel, locate the Covenant homeworld, and return with captured Covenant leadership to force a ceasefire. The artificial intelligent construct, Cortana, carried within John 117's Mark V Mjolnir armor, would serve as the Strike Force's hacker and technology specialist. However, all preparations were interrupted and subsequently cancelled by the Covenant's invasion of Reach. In the ensuing disaster, most of the Spartan IIs were killed, although some took shelter in Oni's castle base. 2 escaped aboard the UNSC Pillar of Autumn, one of whom was placed in cryostasis aboard the ship after sustaining life-threatening injuries during the battle on Gamma Station. The Pillar of Autumn soon arrived at Halo Installation 04, with John 117 ultimately destroying it to prevent the spread of the Flood. During the Battle of Installation 04, the survivors returned to Reach and were able to rendezvous with the remaining Spartans. The survivors then carried out a raid that resulted in the destruction of a Covenant fleet anchorage, stalling a Covenant plan to invade Earth. Spartan IIs would go on to play pivotal roles in the Battle of Earth, the Battle of Installation 05, the Onyx Conflict, and the Battle of Installation 00. Ultimately, John 117 would eliminate the Covenant leadership with the help of the Flood and Thelvadam, effectively defeating the Covenant and ending the war. However, he ended up trapped in space on the back half of the UNSC Forward Unto Dawn and was declared missing in action. I'm curious about that other Spartan. Excuse me. That other Spartan II aboard the Pillar of Autumn. I wasn't familiar with that. I mean, of course, I've seen the readout when you go through the balcony. When you could look down at where your cryo pod was, and the elites are down there. If you go around the back, you can see that there's another control room for another stasis room, it seems like, and there's evidence of a Spartan in stasis there, but I guess I didn't realize that that was actual lore, so that's pretty fun. I'm sorry if you can hear one of my cats meowing outside. She likes to meow when my door is closed. Oni publicly unveiled the Spartan II program in 2547 in order to boost morale, though the super soldiers' true origins remain classified to the general public as of 2558. The 2547 CAA Factbook entry on the Spartans, that's cute, CAA, states that the super soldiers are recruited from all corners of UNSC-governed space. Not true, and that each of them is a highly decorated veteran with literal decades of combat experience, but omits the program's ethically problematic background. At least John 117, who was elevated to a legendary status as the Master Chief in the final months of the war, was given an elaborate, inspiring origin story to hide his true background, promoted by several individuals claiming to have known or interacted with John at some point. However, as of 2553, there were pervasive rumors among the UNSC military that the Spartans had been kidnapped as 6-year-old children and replaced by Flash clones. Admiral Parangoski planned to unveil the Spartan II program's classified aspects to the UEG Defense Committee by early 2553, although any information on their origins remained unconfirmed among military personnel as of 2555. The information is not public knowledge as of 2558, although some of the Spartan IVs were made aware of their predecessors' origins. At some point in 2558, journalist Benjamin Garode uncovered the origins of the program and uploaded his findings to the public network, along with delivering an unsanctioned testimony on the matter to the Unified Earth Government Senate's Armed Forces Committee. This compounded an increasing distrust against Oni and the Spartans generated by a recent attack on a peace conference, apparently perpetrated by the Master Chief. It's so sad to be reminded of Find the Truth, Hunt the Truth, and how cool that was, and how excited I was for Halo 5. While many outsiders view them as single-minded, the Spartan IIs remain independent thinkers. From early on, Dr. Halsey's intent was to mold the candidates into effective soldiers through persuasion and acclamation, as opposed to the brainwashing suggested by some of her colleagues within ONI, believing that in order to be truly efficient, the Spartans must be able to properly understand and embrace the significance of their mission. As such, the Spartans possess a profound understanding of their role as weapons and the weight of the life imposed on them. Most of them do not hold grudges over their abduction and treatment, instead having come to embrace their lives as Spartans as both a necessity and something they were born to do. The Spartan II's training emphasized dedication to one's duty as well as winning at any cost, values most of the active Spartan IIs remain committed to. They have frequently been shown to ignore concerns over their personal health as long as there remains a mission to complete, and tend to become incredibly frustrated when prevented from acting in a combat situation. Because of this, they generally prefer planetary operations to being based aboard starships, with no way to contribute to an engagement. The Spartan IIs enjoy a great deal of solidarity and camaraderie within their group, due to them having grown up together. Indeed, they consider their fellow Spartans family, something that was encouraged in their indoctrination from a young age. Having been taught to refrain from overt emotional displays, the Spartan IIs most commonly convey their emotions through subtle body language and cryptic gestures. They possess numerous unique internal habits and signals conveyed through simple gestures or statements, making interactions among their group largely indecipherable to outsiders. Only a select few outsiders, including Dr. Halsey and Deja, are privy to some of the best-held secrets within the group. Their familiarity with each other's body language allows the Spartan IIs to function in perfect synergy in combat, their teamwork abilities having been described as borderline telepathic. Although the Spartan IIs often have difficulty socializing with baseline humans outside situations of a strictly military nature, they are rather gregarious among themselves and habitually cluster together while out of the battlefield, commonly engaging in activities such as playing cards, exercising together, reading, or maintaining their personal equipment. That's adorable. Most humans view the Spartan IIs with awe, sometimes even revulsion, due to both their reputation and intimidating presence, the latter complemented by the seemingly unnatural speed, precision, and grace of their movements. Few outsiders are willing to as much as touch a Spartan, such as shaking one's hand. The Spartan IIs enjoy a large degree of operational autonomy in the field and typically operate in teams of 3 to 5 and even individually, although the size and composition of these teams is heavily mission-specific. A team leader will typically pick the Spartans best suited for the mission at hand according to their personal talents. However, with the original Spartan II group dispersed across the battlefields of the Covenant War over the decades, certain team arrangements became more established than others. Spartan II teams are assigned color-based designations on a mission-specific basis, blue, red, and green teams being the most prominent of these. On some missions, Red Team has formed smaller splinter units, designated with Greek alphabet, to better suit the mission objectives at the time. Some Spartan II teams appear to have been more well-established since their training, namely Black and Gray teams, which continued to operate with their compositions unchanged over the Covenant War. that's where we're going to bring this video to a close. This is a great story. I think the Spartan IIs form the backbone of, I mean, obviously they form the backbone of Halo, but beyond just character and storytelling, they form the moral backbone. And I think it's really interesting to consider that most of these ideas were developed before the overt jingoist turn in Halo 2. Yeah, I love Halo, and the Spartan IIs rock. Their concept is so good, and I didn't know that Halsey actually got dressed down for the clone thing, because that the poll was right. That was ludicrous. It was only to assuage her own feelings, because she didn't want to have to think about these families that she was taking children from. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope my cat wasn't too distracting in the background. If you did, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel.